Greetings, welcome to the channel. I'm Eddie Set Go, and in this video we're riding the Zero SRF, fully electric, and answering those all-important questions. How far can you go on a full charge? How quickly can you get it charged? And just how fast and powerful is this bike? Let's go. So for those of you who are not familiar with Zero, they've actually been making electric production motorcycles since way back in 2009. While we have big manufacturers like Kawasaki working on their new hybrid technology and Triumph working on their own electric project, Zero have very much been leading the charge in terms of making electric motorcycles, and this is their performance naked middleweight motorcycle, the SRF. And it all looks like a very well-balanced designed motorcycle. Obviously it's fully electric, there's no exhausts or downpipes or anything like that to see, but it's a very well-balanced looking bike. I do like the front end. It has a bit of a Ducati Monster, classic Monster front end with the LED daytime running lights, LED projector headlamps there. We have the main battery unit at the center with the motor just behind it. I will talk about ranges and charging times all in the video, so this is just a quick walk around. So here we go. We're in street mode. So doing a quick media day here with Zero motorcycles, which is quite fun and exciting. This all looks very flash. We have a 12.5-inch TFT dash in front of us, which is adjustable, customizable. You can change the display and what you see. I think this bike compares quite a lot to the other motorcycles that I'm riding at the moment. Especially I'll be making comparisons to my MT-09 SP. There's a lot of similarities, especially in terms of power output and performance, which I'll come to in the video. Straight away there's a lack of a clutch lever and there's a lack of a gear selector down on my left foot. A few weeks ago I did ride a fully electric scooter, but this is a whole different ball game. This really is a different ball game. Just literally pull the throttle and we're away. And it is absolutely silent. The SRF has a very user-friendly seat height of 790mm, meaning at 5 foot 8 inches tall, I'm not the tallest, I can get both feet to flat foot on the floor absolutely comfortably, which is a novelty for me really. I can never really get my feet down unless I'm riding a smaller capacity bike, but no, on this particular machine I can get both feet down. Oh, that's quite good, isn't it? That's got a lot of pull. I can get both feet down, so the seat height is very accommodating. So if you're vertically challenged like myself, 5 foot 8 inches tall, I can get both feet to flat foot, no problem at all. So this really does make it an accessible bike. I do often comment on the peg position of the bikes that I'm riding. Prolonged riding, if you've got a big bend in the knee, it can be a bit uncomfortable after a while, but I'm quite surprised the peg position is quite high for the seat height being quite low, so it feels quite sporty and aggressive. The handlebars are slightly canted forward, so you do lean forward ever so slightly, but there's no uncomfortable bend in the wrists. It's quite a comfortable roadster riding position. You know, this is a roadster, a naked roadster from Zero. It certainly fits the mould that many road bikes are going to now. There's a little hint of sportiness there, a little hint of excitement in this machine. I will come to obviously the charging options, the power outputs shortly in the video. But yes, in terms of the initial first impressions, this bike feels very conventional, really. Very conventional. I like the screen. I like everything is very easy to read. I'm currently in street mode. There's a number of riding modes you can have on the SRF. Eco, Rain, Street, Sport. all of which adjust the power output that the bike is going to deliver when you twist the throttle. There is no gears on this machine, as you would imagine. It's a fully electric bike. It's literally just twist and go like you would on a scooter, for example. There's nothing on my left foot, it's just a peg. There's no gear selector. But I think you instantly get used to it. After the initial minute of riding, after the novelty wears off, you instantly just, get on board and enjoy what's happening here. But goodness me, this bike has got loads of pull. Whoa, that's got loads of pull. I'm just that rear brake is quite that rear brake lever is quite discreet. It's quite close to the I'm going to say the engine. It's quite close to the battery and the motor housing, so you've got to kind of search for that rear brake. There's a little bit of bite in it, but I think most of the bite is coming from those 4-pot calipers at the front. Goodness me, this is zippy, and it's super silent. The only thing I can really hear is the wind blast. But there's no engine roar, there's no induction noise as you crank open the throttle. It's just this silent, rapid pull of acceleration. Goodness. This SRF weighs in at 226 kilos, which isn't the lightest, but most of the weight is quite low down. This is a very big battery compartment where the engine is. The weight is low down, meaning that it's quite easy to flick around. And you don't really notice it. As soon as you're on the bike, it feels very nimble and flickable, so I wouldn't really be concerned about the extra kilos. Yes, it will weigh probably 30 kilos more than my MT09 SP, but because of the low seat height, it makes you can get both feet down quite easily. It makes managing that weight, at stationary and manoeuvring the bike, it makes it quite easy to manoeuvre around. So I wouldn't put the slightly heavier weight of this machine as a con. It's if anything, it just gives it a bit more of a planted feeling. And you can see everyone's just kind of really enjoying ahead of me. Everyone's just kind of enjoying the nimbleness of these bikes because of the low weight. It's quite surprising. It's quite good. It feels very natural straight away. It feels very natural. We have a radial brake master cylinder since we've got 320mm twin front discs at the front of this machine, and there's lots of power there. It's not an instant bite, but it does feel very progressive and strong. You're not going to be lacking. The rear brake is a little bit lethargic, so we say. I do like to use my rear brake quite a bit, especially if I'm braking into corners. If I've overjudged a corner a little bit, I will use the rear brake just to slow down, and it does have a bit of bite. Yeah, this bike is really just handling these corners very well. This is very good. Let's talk about what it takes to charge this machine and how long it takes to charge this machine. If you were to plug this bike in at home, in the conventional wall socket at home, you can plug this bike in overnight, and within 4 hours it will be fully charged. If you're riding around in the city, if you're going to be pootling around in the city, doing stop-start riding, Zero advise that you can get around about 160 miles worth of range when using the Zero SRF around the town. So 160 miles of range on a full charge, which is quite an acceptable amount of range here. It certainly goes beyond what my MT09 SP would give me. I think that gives me about 120 miles on a full tank, maybe. If you were to take the bike purely on the highway or the motorway, travelling at 50 to 70 miles an hour, you're estimated to get about 100 miles of travel, maybe 110 miles of range on the battery. So a full charge it at home overnight, 4 hours, you'll get about 100 plus miles of range if you take the bike out on the freeway, on the motorway, which isn't too bad. Again, that's quite comparable to my MT09. I get about 100 plus miles, 120 miles of range on a full tank of gas. So these are quite comparable figures to my internal combustion powered MT, which is, yeah, that's quite good actually. I mean, where the figures start to drop off is when you talk about going out for those Sunday blasts. If you're doing what we're doing now and just going out for a blast around the countryside, going to the canyons if you're in the US. I know you have a lot of canyons there, don't you? Round in the UK here we have these very crazy little British countryside roads full of, you know, potholes and livestock that you have to avoid. But if you're taking the Zero SRF just out for those twisty blasts and you're riding the bike in sport mode alone, you'll probably get about 60 to 70 miles worth of range riding the bike hard. So if you're going to ride this bike as hard as you can for a Sunday afternoon blast, you're going to hit about 50 to 60 miles of range. Then you're going to start looking for somewhere to charge. Now that's not really a massive problem. I think that if you're going out for a hard ride, you will stop after an hour or so to stretch your legs, grab a coffee, grab a sandwich or something. I've mentioned charging the bike at home. It will take 4 hours on a standard conventional wall socket. If you were to take the bike to a fast or rapid charging station, which you can find pretty much at most petrol stations, at supermarkets now, as the bike is out of the crate, it will charge fully in about 2.5 hours, which is quite a significant amount of time really. I know a lot of you are thinking, my God, Eddie, that's way too long. What am I going to do for 2.5 hours? But one of the optional upgrades you can get for the SRF is the rapid charging unit. And it fits in this where the petrol tank is, where the petrol tank would be on an internal combustion engine bike. What the rapid charging unit does, if you were to take the bike to a rapid charging station, you can get a 95% charge within 1 hour. Quick photo opportunity. You can just see moving the bike around in these slow speeds here. You can feel that weight, I must admit. So when you're on the bike and maneuvering it around, we're just doing a quick U-turn here for some photo opportunities with the camera. When you're sat on the bike, because the seat height is quite low, both feet can be down, you can maneuver it quite easily. It feels a very low, manageable weight, but just maneuvering the bike then, you can feel that weight, especially if it's if you're on a bit of an incline like I am now. But it's not a major problem, it's just something that you have to get used to, I think. As you can see here, we have obviously the mode, speed, we've got the range, we've got 73 miles of range. I'm currently in street mode. There are obviously several riding modes on the bike. Eco, where you can really restrict how much battery power you're using. Just in street mode, the acceleration is absolutely rapid. I'll get to the performance and the power output of the bike shortly in the video, but it's quite interesting because you associate going fast on a bike with lots of engine noise and roar, and all you can hear is that electric motor spinning up, and it just makes all of a sudden the trees and everything start to whiz by, and it does mess with your mind a little bit, I must admit. But at the same time, quite scary. It's like going on a roller coaster because you can't really hear much. All you can hear is the tracks, and then you just kind of glide through whatever's happening on the roller coaster, and it feels a little bit like this. There's no engine noise, just the whirring of the wind and this whine of this battery motor. It's quite funny because I've actually put earplugs in today, and I'm not quite sure why I put earplugs in. So yes, if you have the rapid charging unit fitted to the SRF, you can actually get the bike charged within 1 hour at a rapid charging station. The only con perhaps for that is that the rapid charging unit, the additional upgrade, it will cost you about £3,000 to get that installed. So these are quite significant initial costs if you want to have that extra charging capacity. But just chatting with I was just chatting with the Zero representative there, very nice chap called Paul, and he said that a lot of customers who buy the SRF and the bikes like this, they don't really bother with the charging upgrades. If you were to charge the bike at home, which I think most of us would do, on a 4-hour slow charge costing you all of £2 or $2, you can get a decent amount of range, an acceptable amount of range, whether it's city riding, 160 miles, cross riding out in the town or out on the twisties for about 100 or so miles, or really hard riding for about 60 to 70 miles. I think that would suit many of us, to be fair, unless you're going to be touring the country or the continent, or going on rides on roads that you're not really familiar with. You will have to plan ahead and just look for those supermarkets, those gas stations where there are charging places, and plan your route accordingly. There is something, I was reading an article the other day, I think in Cycle World, and they were talking about a phenomenon called range anxiety. When you're riding an electric vehicle, a lot of people have what's called range anxiety, thinking, oh my god, will the bike make it? Will I be able to travel as far as I want to go, or will I be left at the side of the road with a dead battery? But once things like the infrastructure improves, when we start to see more charging stations, rapid charging stations, all the petrol stations, all the supermarkets have them here in the UK, most of them are free to use, and you can charge the bike at home. It's much like charging your cell phone, your mobile phone. You charge it overnight and off you go for the day. And Zero do say that the powertrain does come with a 5-year warranty. And even after 160,000 miles of riding, the bike will still have an 80% efficiency of battery left. So that's a whole heap of miles and an extra long warranty with the bike. Most bikes come with a 2-year, 3-year warranty. This comes with a 5-year warranty on the powertrain alone. So there's plenty of safety and fallback measures and support that you can tap into to make sure that you're comfortable with your new electric Zero. So there you have, you can rapid charge this bike in less than an hour. You can cover up to a good 100 miles cross-riding, different types of riding comfortably. And if you charge it overnight, it'll cost you a couple of bucks. In terms of servicing the bike, it takes less time to service than a standard internal combustion engine bike, because there's less parts, there's less lubricants and things. The chain, it doesn't have a chain, it has a belt drive, which usually needs changing every 10,000, 20,000 miles. There's even a handy feature on the phone app. If you have the Zero app, you can hold the phone up to the timing belt and ping the timing belt, and it'll actually tell you whether the belt needs tightening or changing based on the frequency, the note that the belt gives off and is read into your phone. It's really quite trick. You can hold your phone up to the belt, ping it, and it'll tell you whether or not it needs adjustment, which is quite innovative. So we've talked about how far you can go on a single charge, how long it takes to charge, those all-important electric bike questions. But the final question really is ever so important, is how fast can it go, Eddie? How fast and how powerful is this machine? So the SRF puts out 110 brake horsepower at about 5,000 RPM, which is quite an acceptable and quite a decent amount of power. It's definitely in that Goldilocks zone of a plus 100 brake horsepower, which I think is more than enough for most of us to use in everyday riding and even have a bit of fun on a racetrack. That sort of power can get us through most situations and have plenty of fun on. 110 brake, but the headline figure for the SRF is not so much the peak power, it's all about the torque. Let's talk about the torque on this bike. The SRF produces, get ready for this, 190 Newton meters of torque, of peak torque. 190. By comparison, an MT10 from Yamaha, that'll push out about 100 Newton meters of torque. The SRF pushes out 190 Newton meters. It is a staggering, eye-watering amount of torque that this bike can produce. And that's not all. The SRF establishes peak torque at 1,400 RPM, which is absolutely rock bottom. It's right at the bottom of the range, and that means you can tap into 190 Newton meters of peak torque at the very first twist of the throttle. It is a staggering amount of power. What that means in the real world is, if you were to accelerate from 0 to 60 on a Yamaha R1, you could probably reach 0 to 60 in about 2.6 seconds if you are skilled enough to wield the R1 as a machine. The SRF from Zero will reach 0 to 60, get this, 0 to 60 in 1.6 seconds. 1.6 seconds, if you can handle the bike and keep it under control, you could, in theory, reach 0 to 60 in 1.6 seconds. Now, in the real world, even though this bike comes with traction control and stability management systems, it's going to be very difficult to achieve 0 to 60 in 1.6 seconds, but there have been a few magazines which have strapped this thing down on a rolling road and hit 0 to 60 in 1.6 seconds. It is that fast. It is lightning fast, pulling away from a stop. And what you also have to take into account is there's no gear changes. It's just pull the throttle as hard as you can and the bike will do the rest. So is it fast enough? It is eye-wateringly fast. I mean, the peak power tends to tail off at about 5,000, 6,000 RPM. and then as you get higher up the rev range and reach those higher speeds, it tends to tail off, and it's quite comparable to a Yamaha MT-07 in terms of that top end power. But that initial bite, that initial grunt, getting up to speed, the Zero SRF will launch you up to top speed, will launch you up to motorway speeds with ease, and it will no doubt embarrass a few internal combustion engine motorcycles if you're going out riding, pulling away from a standing start. This bike will absolutely just leave other bikes dead, especially in those first few 100 meters. Instant power, you pull the throttle and this bike just accelerates at a rate of knots, and I'm just in street mode. We're going to try it shortly in sport mode and just see what it's like. But once you start hitting 70, 80 miles an hour, you've got the throttle pinned open, the power just tends to drift off and peak off a little bit. So it's up to 60 miles an hour, the bike is lightning fast. And then it starts to tail off and become a much more manageable, much more gradual climb of speed. Using those brakes there. In terms of how the bike handles, we've obviously spent a lot of time talking about the energy and the charging and the power output. In terms of how the bike handles, it is very stable. That low centre of gravity keeps the bike pinned, going through corners and becoming more confident through these corners. The suspension, we've got Showa separate function 43mm adjustable front forks. We've got a Showa piggyback reservoir on the back, that's also adjustable. The brakes, I think the rear brake is a little bit lethargic for my liking. I would like to have a bit more bite on that rear brake, but the front brakes especially are very capable, and with that radial brake master cylinder, it's very progressive and it's very assured of itself. I don't think you've got anything to worry about in terms of those front brakes there. The seat itself is quite firm, I must admit. It's quite a firm seat. But then again, as the bike will need charging every 100 miles or so, I don't think you're going to be spending way too long in the saddle for extended periods of time. So it is a firm seat, I must admit. But there's plenty of room, and there's plenty of room for a pillion. Goodness me, this performance of this bike is fantastic. It really does take you by surprise. If you've not ridden an electric motorcycle, don't write it off until you've tried it. This is fantastic. I've been out for a couple of hours now. We've stopped for a coffee, which is quite nice. I've still got 46 miles of range left on the bike. I'm certainly not getting any anxiety right now in terms of range, which is quite cool. Of course, if I was to become a bit conscious of how much range I have, I can drop the bike down into rain or eco mode and extend the range I have. Obviously I'm travelling slower, but there are options there to help kind of mitigate the limited range that the electric bikes have. And I know we're talking about limited range here, but just remember, petrol bikes also have a limited range. You've got to fill up at some point, and with electric bikes you've got to charge at some point. But the beauty of this is you can charge it at home. If you could fill your bike up with gasoline at home, I think we'd all do it, wouldn't we? Safely. But here you can charge this at home. You can put your kettle on one switch and plug the bike in on the switch next to it. We're in street mode now. Let's just slow down. 30 miles an hour. We're doing 30 miles an hour. And I'm just going to pin the throttle. Goodness me, you can feel the front end just instant power. There's no delay whatsoever. On the premium and standard SRF, you also get cruise control, which is a very nice addition to have. Using this control switch on the right thumb here, you can engage the cruise control and give your right hand a rest. Okay, so I've just put the bike into sport mode. I'm quite keen to see just what the bike has under all of that electronic battery-powered metal beneath me. So we're just going to pull over here for a second. Make sure we've got a clear road ahead of us. And this should be very easy. There's no clutch to engage. There's no bites. There's no gear to select. It's literally just pull the throttle and unleash the fury. So let's give it a go, shall we? Sport mode on the Zero SRF. 1, 2, 3. Let's just go for it. Full power. Goodness. Okay, that's really good. Oh wow, that's fantastic. So the initial bite, it doesn't actually tear your hands away from the bars. There's a slight gradual moment just where it kind of eases you into the acceleration, and then it really hits you. So it's not an unmanageable delivery of power in sport mode. There's a little moment there where it does kind of ease you into it, and then it hits you. It gives you plenty of time to hang onto the bars and get a good grip. But launching you up to the speed limits, it is blindingly quick. I'm going to say it is comparable in terms of performance to my MT-09. If I really gunned that, I think the MT-09 would perhaps have a little tiny bit more pull. When it gets to about 60 miles an hour plus, the MT-09 might pull a bit more. But up to then, I'd say that this bike is very comparable. You're probably going to be able to reach speeds quicker because you're not having to change gear. There's less margin for error. You're not going to miss any gears. It's just pull the throttle and go. So this is a very exciting, forward-thinking machine. If you have an opportunity to test ride one of these machines, I really urge you to go out and have a go. So if you were to ask me, Eddie, would you trade in your MT-09 for one of these? I think at the moment I'm too much in love with my MT-09 SP, so I'm not going to be trading it in anytime soon. However, I will say this about the Zero SRF. If the future of motorcycling is anything like this, then we as motorcyclists have absolutely nothing to worry about. The performance and exhilaration of this bike alone is brilliant. I'm grinning from ear to ear. This is a silent road ninja capable of fantastic acceleration. And in time, as the support infrastructure for electric bikes improves, we're going to be much more at ease swinging our legs over these bikes and going out for a blast with your buddies. It really is an awesome bike. And yes, it has that initial outlay of money. It is quite an expensive bike to buy, but to run, you're going to be saving money over the course of time. So I really do urge you to go out, and if you have the opportunity to ride this bike, swing your leg over, go for a test ride. It will surprise you. So there you have a quick first ride of the Zero SRF. What do you think about this electric motorcycle? Please drop a comment below, join the discussion. If you have enjoyed this video, please give a thumbs up to support the channel. Your support is always appreciated. And if you are new around here, then please make sure to subscribe to see future motorcycle news, reviews and content. I've been Eddie Set Go. Hope you ride safe and stay safe. I'll see you next time. This is amazing.